She bought the yacht to remember him. But some vessels carry more than memories. A logbook hidden beneath the rust, and a secret worth killing for. If love led you to a fortune built on lies, would you still open the book? The marina smelled like rust and regret. Anna Walsh stood at the edge of the weathered dock, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of Tom's old windbreaker, the one that still carried the faint scent of his cologne beneath the salt and mildew. The sky above was the color of steel, heavy clouds pressing down on the Oregon coast like a weight she'd been carrying for 6 months. 6 months since the Coast Guard had found Tom's body tangled in fishing nets 3 miles offshore. 6 months since the word accident had stopped meaning anything at all. The Mariner's Rest sat at the far end of the dock, listing slightly to starboard, her white hull streaked with rust and algae. She'd been beautiful once Tom had spent years restoring her, sanding and painting and talking to the boat like she could hear him. "Every ship remembers its captain," he used to say, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes bright with something Anna had loved but never fully understood. Now the yacht looked abandoned, forgotten, like everything else Tom had left behind. Anna's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her sister. "Please tell me you didn't actually do this." She'd done it. $3,200. The last of their emergency fund. The money she'd been saving to keep the lights on through winter. The money that was supposed to cover Leo's school trip and the overdue medical bills still piling up from Tom's cancer treatment 2 years ago. All of it gone in a single impulsive phone call to the harbor master. "You sure about this, Mrs. Walsh?" he'd asked, his voice heavy with doubt. "Boat's been sitting here 6 months. She's not in good shape." Anna hadn't been sure about anything since the day the police knocked on her door. But when she'd heard the Mariner's Rest was being sold for scrap, something inside her had cracked wide open. She couldn't let them take her. Not the boat. Not the last piece of Tom that still existed in the world. The dock creaked beneath her feet as she walked, each step echoing across the empty marina. It was a Tuesday morning, and the only other soul in sight was a tern perched on a piling, watching her with unblinking black eyes. Anna stopped in front of the yacht, her breath catching. Up close, the damage was worse than she'd imagined. The railings were corroded, the teak deck split and warped from months of rain. One of the windows had a spiderweb crack running through it, and the name on the stern Mariner's Rest was barely legible beneath layers of grime. But Anna didn't see the decay. She saw Tom standing at the helm, his hair wild from the wind, laughing as he guided them through a summer squall. She saw Leo, younger then, squealing with delight as dolphins raced alongside the bow. She saw a life that felt impossibly far away now, like it had belonged to someone else. Anna reached out and touched the railing. The metal was cold and rough beneath her palm, flaking rust staining her fingers orange. She didn't pull away. For a moment, it felt like touching Tom's hand. Behind her, footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. Mrs. Walsh. She turned to find Carl, the harbor master, a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes and a face that had seen too many widows standing where she stood now. "Didn't think you'd actually come," he said quietly. "I had to." Carl nodded, though his expression said he didn't understand. Nobody did. Not her sister, who'd called her reckless and irrational. Not Leo, who'd looked at her with something close to betrayal when she told him she'd bought the boat. "You can't bring him back, Mom," he'd said, his voice flat and cold in a way that made her chest ache. "I know," she'd whispered. "But I can't let him go yet either." Carl handed her a set of keys, their edges sharp against her palm. "She's all yours," he said. "For what it's worth." Anna nodded, unable to speak. Carl hesitated, then added almost as an afterthought. "You know, funny thing, someone else was asking about this boat just a couple days ago." Anna's head snapped up. "What?" Yeah, man in a suit. Expensive looking. Asked if anyone had bought her yet. If I knew where Tom kept his personal effects. Carl shrugged. Didn't give a name. Just left a card with a number on it. I threw it out. Anna's pulse quickened. What did he look like? Tall. Dark coat. Sunglasses, even though it was overcast. Carl frowned. Why? You know him? No, Anna said quietly, though unease was already curling in her stomach. I don't. After Carl left, Anna stood alone on the dock, staring at the yacht. A stranger asking about Tom's boat. 2 days ago, right before she'd bought it. She shook her head, trying to push the thought away. It was probably nothing someone interested in buying it for parts, maybe a creditor looking for assets. Tom had died with debts, lots of them. But still, the timing felt wrong. Anna climbed aboard, the gangplank groaning under her weight. The deck was slick with moisture, and she moved carefully, her hand trailing along the cabin wall for balance. When she reached the helm, she stopped. The cockpit was empty, stripped bare. The navigation equipment was gone, the radio mount torn from the console, even the life jackets and emergency kit missing. It looked like someone had gutted the place, but it was the floorboards that made her breath catch. Near the base of the helm, fresh scratches marred the wood-deep gouges, as if someone had used a crowbar to pry something open recently. Anna crouched down, running her fingers over the marks. They were new, recent. Her chest tightened. Someone had been here. Someone had been looking for something. And whatever it was, they hadn't found it yet. Anna returned to the marina the following Saturday with a toolbox, a bucket of cleaning supplies, and Leo. Her son sat in the passenger seat, silent. His hood pulled up despite the mild weather, earbuds in, his face turned toward the window. He hadn't said a word since she'd told him they were spending the day working on the boat. Anna didn't push. She'd learned over the past 6 months that Leo's silence was easier to bear than his anger. The Mariner's Rest looked worse in daylight. Rain had pooled in the cockpit, and a family of gulls had claimed the bow as their own, scattering feathers and droppings across the deck. Anna set down her supplies and stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what she'd taken on. This wasn't just a restoration project. It was an act of faith in something she couldn't name. Leo climbed aboard without a word, pulled out his earbuds, and started clearing debris from the deck with a detachment that made Anna's chest ache. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Not like I had a choice." They worked in silence for the first hour. Anna scrubbed the cockpit while Leo hauled trash bags to the dumpster at the edge of the marina. The boat groaned beneath them, wood swelling and contracting with each shift of weight, and Anna found herself whispering to it the way Tom used to. "We'll get you fixed up," she murmured, running a rag over the salt-crusted helm. "Just hang on a little longer." Leo paused, glancing at her. "You know it can't hear you, right?" Anna smiled faintly. "Your dad thought it could." For a moment, something softened in Leo's expression. Then it was gone, and he turned back to his work. By midday, they'd made progress. The deck was clear, the worst of the rust scraped away, and the cockpit gleamed faintly under a thin layer of polish. Anna stepped back, wiping sweat from her forehead, and for the first time in months, she felt something other than exhaustion. She felt useful. Leo reappeared from below deck, holding something in his hand. "Found this in one of the cabinets," he said, his voice quiet. It was a coffee mug, white ceramic with a chipped handle, and Tom's handwriting scrawled across the side in permanent marker. "Captain Tom, best dad ever." Leo had made it in 3rd grade. A Father's Day gift. Anna's throat tightened. "I didn't know he kept it on the boat," Leo said, staring at the mug like it might disappear if he looked away. "He took it everywhere." Anna said softly. Said it was good luck. Leo was quiet for a long time. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear him, I miss him. Anna crossed the deck and pulled her son into a hug. He didn't pull away. They kept working. And as the afternoon wore on, Anna began finding more pieces of Tom's scattered throughout the boat. His favorite fishing lure, tangled in a drawer. A photograph of the three of them, sun-faded and water-stained, tucked into a cabinet above the galley. A worn baseball cap hanging from a hook in the cabin. Each discovery felt like a small gift. A reminder that Tom had been real, that their life together hadn't been a dream. But then Anna found something that didn't fit. It was a receipt, crumpled and shoved into a compartment beneath the navigation console. Fuel purchase. Port of Coos Bay. $847. The date was from 8 months ago, 2 months before Tom died. Anna frowned. They'd never been to Coos Bay. She unfolded the receipt carefully, her eyes scanning the details. The amount was too high for a casual trip, and the port was nearly 200 miles south, far from their usual routes. She set the receipt aside and kept searching. In another compartment, she found a business card, plain white, no name, just a phone number printed in black ink. On the back, in Tom's handwriting, Maritime Lawyer, call if trouble. Anna's pulse quickened. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number. It rang. Once, twice, then a recorded message. The number you have reached is no longer in service. Anna hung up, staring at the card. Why would Tom need a maritime lawyer? And why would he hide the number? Leo appeared in the doorway, holding a toolbox. Mom, the engine room hatch is stuck. Can you help? Anna pocketed the card and followed him below deck. The engine room was at the stern, accessible through a narrow hatch in the cabin floor. Leo had already loosened the bolts, but the panel wouldn't budge. Anna knelt beside it, wedging a crowbar into the seam. On 3, she said. 1, 2. They pulled together, and the hatch gave way with a groan of protesting metal. Stale air rushed up, thick and damp, carrying the scent of oil and rust. Anna aimed her flashlight into the darkness below. The beam swept across the engine, the bilge pump, the fuel lines. And then it caught on something that didn't belong. A metal panel, bolted to the bulkhead near the engine block. It was newer than the rest of the boat, the steel still dark and unblemished by rust. Anna's heart began to pound. She climbed down into the engine room, her hands steady on the ladder, and knelt in front of the panel. There were no markings, no labels, just 6 bolts holding it in place. What is that? Leo called from above. I don't know, Anna said quietly. She worked the bolts loose one by one, her hands trembling now, and when the last one came free, the panel swung open. Behind it was a narrow compartment, barely large enough to hold a shoebox, and inside, wrapped in a waterproof case and sealed with duct tape, was a leather-bound logbook. Anna pulled it out, her breath catching. The cover was worn, the edges frayed, but Tom's initials were embossed on the front in faded gold. T.W. She peeled back the duct tape and opened the book. The first page was filled with Tom's handwriting, neat, methodical, unmistakably his. First run. March 14, 20K cash. No one can ever know. Anna's hands began to shake. She flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning dates, coordinates, names she didn't recognize, and amounts of money that made her stomach drop. $20,000, $35,000, $50,000. What had Tom been doing? Leo's voice floated down from above, distant and faint. Mom? You okay? Anna couldn't answer. She stared at the logbook, her husband's handwriting blurring through tears she didn't remember shedding. And in that moment, She realized with cold, crushing certainty she hadn't known Tom at all. Anna sent Leo home with a neighbor, claiming she needed to finish some work on the boat. He'd looked at her with suspicion he knew when she was lying, but he didn't argue. As soon as his footsteps faded down the dock, Anna locked herself in the cabin and opened the logbook. The leather cover was soft with age, the pages yellowed and brittle at the edges. Salt had stained some of the entries, and others were written in pencil so faded she had to squint to read them. But Tom's handwriting was unmistakable. She'd seen it on birthday cards, grocery lists, love notes tucked into her lunch bag. Now it filled page after page, with numbers and coordinates that meant nothing to her and everything at once. The 14th of March 2019. First run. Port of Bandon to 42 degrees north, 125 degrees west. Cargo. 6 crates. Payment. $20,000 cash. Client satisfied. No complications. Anna's hands trembled as she turned the page. The 2nd of April 2019. Second run. Same route. Cargo. 8 crates. Payment. $25,000. Weather rough. Nearly capsized off Cape Blanco. Too close. The entries continued, methodical and clinical, like a captain's log stripped of emotion. But every few pages, something else bled through doubt, fear, justification. The 10th of May 2019. I hate this. But the bills are piling up. Anna's working herself to death. Leo needs braces. The treatments bankrupted us. This is temporary. Just until we're clear. Anna's vision blurred. She pressed her palm against the page, as if she could reach through the ink and grab Tom by the shoulders, shake him, demand to know why he hadn't told her. Why he'd thought this was the answer. She flipped ahead, her breath shallow, her chest tight. The entries grew more frequent, the amounts larger. $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And then, buried between 2 pages, a folded nautical chart fell into her lap. Anna unfolded it carefully. The Oregon coast was marked in red ink routes, waypoints, drop-off coordinates. Some were circled, others crossed out. At the bottom, in Tom's handwriting, final run, 44 degrees north, 124 degrees west, $75,000. Enough to walk away clean. Anna's stomach turned. She flipped to the last entry, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the book. The 18th of October 2021. 1 week until the final run. The client's getting nervous. Says I know too much. Marcus thinks I should walk away now, but we need this money. 1 more job, and we're free. I can fix everything I've broken. If I don't make it back, the truth is in this book. Anna, I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I could do this without you ever knowing. Forgive me. Anna dropped the logbook. It hit the cabin floor with a dull thud, and she stared at it like it might explode. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps, her chest heaving. Outside, the waves slapped against the hull, rhythmic and relentless. A rope creaked somewhere above deck. A gull screamed. And Anna sat in the dim light of the cabin, her husband's confession heavy in her hands, and realized with crushing certainty Tom hadn't died in an accident. He'd been killed. She didn't know how long she sat there. Minutes, hours. The light shifted, the sun sinking lower, casting long shadows through the cracked cabin windows. Finally, Anna stood. Her legs felt weak, her body numb. She picked up the logbook, tucked it under her arm, and climbed back up to the deck. The marina was empty now, the other boats dark and silent. Only the sound of water lapping against the pilings and the distant cry of seabirds. Anna leaned against the helm, staring out at the horizon. You wouldn't do this, she whispered to the empty air. You wouldn't put us in danger. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Tom had done exactly that. He'd smuggled cargo drugs, weapons, maybe worse to pay for their survival. And when he'd tried to walk away, someone had made sure he never could. Anna's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. She opened it, her pulse quickening. It was a picture of the Mariner's Rest taken from the dock. Tonight, her blood turned to ice. Someone was watching. Another text came through. You found the book. Anna's hands shook as she typed back. Who is this? The response was immediate. Return it, and we'll forget this happened. Keep it, and you'll end up like Tom. Anna stared at the screen. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked around the marina, scanning the shadows, the parked cars, the empty dock. Nothing. No one. But they were out there. Watching. Waiting. Anna climbed off the boat. The logbook clutched against her chest and walked quickly toward her car. Her hands fumbled with the keys, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She slid into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and sat there in the dark, trembling. The phone buzzed again. Another text. You have 48 hours. Anna deleted the messages, her hands shaking, and started the engine. As she pulled out of the marina, she glanced in the rearview mirror. A black SUV sat at the edge of the parking lot, headlights off, engine running. She couldn't see the driver, but she knew they were watching. Anna didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, the logbook open in front of her, a cold mug of coffee forgotten at her elbow. Leo was asleep upstairs. His door cracked open the way he'd insisted since Tom died. Anna had hidden the logbook in his backpack earlier, the last place anyone would think to look. But now she had it out again, reading and rereading entries until the words blurred together. The 3rd of June 2020. Drop-off delayed. Client wants proof of delivery. Had to take photos. I hate that I'm good at this now. The 17th of August 2020. Marcus is nervous. Says the client's getting paranoid. Wants us to move faster. I told him we need to be careful. He said, careful doesn't pay the bills. The 2nd of November 2020. Anna asked where the extra money came from. Told her I picked up overtime work. She believed me. God, I hate lying to her. Anna's chest tightened with every line. She remembered that conversation. She'd been so relieved when Tom told her he'd found extra work, relieved and grateful, and too exhausted to ask questions. She'd kissed him and told him he was saving them. And all the while, he'd been smuggling contraband across the Pacific Northwest. She flipped to the nautical charts tucked into the back of the logbook. Red ink marked routes up and down the coast: Bandon, Coos Bay, Newport, Astoria. Some of the coordinates were circled. Others crossed out. And at the bottom of one chart, in Tom's handwriting, 44 degrees north, 124 degrees west. Final drop, $75K. Walk away clean. Anna traced the coordinates with her finger, her mind racing. That location was offshore, miles from any harbor. If Tom had made the drop, where was the money? And if he hadn't, her phone buzzed on the table, shattering the silence. Anna's heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed it, her hands trembling. A text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. Anna opened it, and the air left her lungs. It was Leo. Walking out of school that afternoon, his backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in. The photo had been taken from across the street. Close enough to see his face. Close enough to follow him home. Anna's vision tunneled, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Another text came through. Tick-tock. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. Her hands shook so badly she had to clench them into fists to make them stop. They weren't just threatening her anymore. They were threatening her son. Anna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She paced the kitchen, her mind racing. She couldn't go to the police. The logbook was evidence that would destroy Tom's name, revoke any survivor benefits, maybe even implicate her if they thought she'd known. But if she didn't go to the police, she was on her own. And whoever was watching her had already proven they were willing to kill to protect their secrets. Anna stopped pacing and stared at the logbook on the table. Tom's handwriting stared back at her, neat and methodical. A record of choices that had led to his death. "I thought I was protecting you," he'd written. But all he'd done was put them in danger. The next morning, Anna drove to the marina. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything but sit in the dark and try to figure out what to do. The black SUV was parked at the edge of the lot again, windows tinted, engine off. Anna's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to keep walking. She found Carl in the harbor master's office, hunched over a cup of coffee and a stack of invoices. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "Mrs. Walsh," he said carefully. "Didn't expect to see you this early." Anna closed the door behind her. The man who came asking about the boat. What did he want? Carl shifted uncomfortably. "I told you, he was just—" "Carl." Anna's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Please, I need to know." Carl sighed, setting down his coffee. "He offered me $10,000. Anna's breath caught. "For what?" "Just to tell him if anyone bought the Mariner's Rest. That's all. I didn't take it," he added quickly. But he was serious, Mrs. Walsh. The kind of serious that makes you lock your doors at night. Anna's stomach turned. "Did he say why?" "No, but he knew your husband. Mentioned him by name. Said Tom had something that belonged to his employer, and they wanted it back." Anna felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," Carl said. "I told him the boat was sold to a private buyer and I couldn't give out names. He didn't like that, but he left." Carl hesitated, then added quietly, "Mrs. Walsh, if you're in some kind of trouble—" "I'm not," Anna lied. She turned and walked out before Carl could say anything else. Back at the yacht, Anna sat in the cockpit, the logbook open on her lap. The wind tugged at the pages, flipping them back and forth like time itself refusing to stay still. She stared at Tom's handwriting, at the careful notes and coordinates, at the evidence of a life she'd never known he was living. "You said this boat carried your soul," she whispered to the empty air. "I didn't know it was guilt." Her voice broke, and tears spilled down her cheeks. She wiped them away angrily, but they kept coming. She'd loved him. She'd trusted him. And he'd lied to her for 3 years. Anna turned to the final entry, the one dated a week before his death. The 18th of October 2021. "One more job, one more lie. And then I'll tell her everything. I'll make it right." But below that, in the same handwriting, was another line. One Anna hadn't noticed before. "If you're reading this, Anna, I'm already gone. The coordinates are real. The money's still there. And so is the truth." Anna's breath caught. She flipped the page and froze. There was one more entry, dated 3 days after Tom's death. The handwriting was different, hurried, angry. He thought he could walk away. He was wrong. The money's ours. And now, so is the book. Anna's hands trembled as she stared at the words. Someone else had written in Tom's logbook. After he died, someone who knew exactly what Tom had been doing, and exactly where the money was hidden. Anna looked out at the water, the waves rolling in slow and steady, and realized with cold, sinking certainty, Tom's death hadn't just been about silencing him. It had been about claiming what he'd left behind. And now, Whoever had killed him was coming for her. Anna found Marcus's number in Tom's old phone contacts. She sat in her car outside a diner in Newport, her hands trembling as she typed out a message. "This is Anna Walsh, Tom's wife. I need to talk to you. It's about the boat." She hesitated, then added, "And the logbook." The reply came within minutes. "Meet me at Pier 9. 1 hour. Come alone." Marcus looked older than Anna remembered. He'd been at Tom's funeral, quiet, withdrawn, standing at the back like he didn't belong. Now he stood at the end of the pier, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, his face gaunt and tired. Anna approached slowly, the logbook tucked under her arm. "You found it," Marcus said quietly. It wasn't a question. Anna nodded. "I need to know what this means. All of it." Marcus looked out at the water, his jaw tight. "You sure you want to hear it? I don't have a choice anymore. They're threatening my son." That got his attention. He turned to face her, his eyes sharp with something between fear and resignation. "Show me." Anna handed him the logbook. Marcus flipped through it, his face going pale with each page. When he reached the final entry, the one dated after Tom's death, he stopped breathing. "Jesus," he whispered. They wrote in it. "Who?" Marcus closed the book, his hands shaking. "The people Tom worked for. The syndicate." Anna felt her chest tighten. "Tell me everything." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing whether the truth would help or destroy her. Then he spoke. "Tom started 3 years ago, after the cancer treatments bankrupted you. He was desperate, Anna. We both were. A mutual friend connected us with someone who needed transport. High-value goods. Stolen art, jewelry, antiquities. Things people would pay a lot of money to move quietly." Anna's stomach turned. "You helped him." "At first, yeah. But I got out after 6 months. Told Tom he should too. He said he would." Marcus's voice cracked. "But he didn't. He kept going. Said he needed 1 more year, 1 more job. He kept saying that. And the final run?" Marcus's face darkened. "Tom found out what he was really moving. It wasn't just stolen goods. The syndicate was using the routes to launder money, millions of dollars. Tom had coordinates to a submerged cache. 2.3 million in cash and valuables. He was supposed to deliver it." Anna's breath caught. 2 million! "He told me he was going to take it. Use it to disappear. Start over, somewhere safe." Marcus looked at her, his eyes hollow. "I told him not to. I told him they'd kill him. But he said it was the only way out." Anna's knees went weak. She leaned against the pier railing, the wind cold against her face. "They killed him," she said quietly, "because he tried to steal from them." "Yeah." Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "And now they want the logbook. Because it's the only record of the routes, the drops, the people involved. It's evidence that could take down the entire operation." Anna looked down at the logbook in her hands, its leather cover worn and soft with age. Tom had died for this. And now she was holding the reason why. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice breaking. Marcus shook his head. "If you go after the money, you'll end up dead. If you give them the book, they'll kill you anyway. You know too much. And so does your son, just by association." Anna's chest tightened with panic. "Then what?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You have to make them think the money's already gone." Anna stared at him. "How?" "We fake a retrieval. We go to the coordinates, document it, make it look like we pulled everything up. Then we leak it to the right people, make the syndicate think someone else got there first. They'll chase ghosts instead of you." Anna's mind raced. "And the real money?" "Stays where it is, until we figure out how to turn it over to the authorities without getting you killed." She looked out at the water, at the endless stretch of gray-blue horizon. Somewhere out there, $2 million sat at the bottom of the ocean. And somewhere closer, the people who'd killed her husband were watching, waiting for her to make a mistake. Anna turned to Marcus, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. What if we make them think we took it first? Marcus blinked. What? What if we don't just fake the retrieval, we make it real? We go to the coordinates, we find the cash, and we use it as leverage. We tell them we'll return it in exchange for our safety. Anna, that's insane. They'll kill you the second you hand it over. Not if we do it publicly. Not if we have proof. Not if we make it so messy that killing us would bring more attention than letting us go. Marcus stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. You're right. It's insane. He paused. But it might actually work. Anna's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her pulse quickening. Another unknown number. Another text. Time's up. Tomorrow night. Pier 9. Bring the book. Come alone. Or your son pays. Anna's hands shook as she read the words. She looked up at Marcus, her face pale. They're not waiting anymore. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then we move tonight. Anna nodded, her heart pounding. She clutched the logbook against her chest and turned toward the parking lot, her mind racing with plans she had no idea how to execute. But as she reached her car, she paused. A black SUV sat at the far end of the lot, engine running, headlights off. The same one that had been following her for days. Anna's breath caught. Marcus stepped beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. They know, he said quietly. Yeah, Anna whispered. They know. And somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. Waiting. They left before dawn. Anna had sent Leo to stay with her sister, claiming she needed a few days to finish work on the yacht. He'd hugged her tightly at the door, sensing something was wrong but too afraid to ask. I love you, she'd whispered into his hair. No matter what happens, remember that. Now she stood on the deck of a rented fishing boat, the Mariner's Rest left behind at the dock, and watched the coastline disappear into the gray morning mist. Marcus stood at the helm, silent and focused, his face tight with the same fear Anna felt coiling in her chest. They were sailing toward the coordinates Tom had marked. Toward $2 million. Toward the truth. The sea was calm, but the air felt heavy, oppressive, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Anna clutched the logbook against her chest, the leather warm from her hands. She'd read Tom's final entries so many times the words were burned into her memory. The money's still there, and so is the truth. But it was the USB drive Marcus had mentioned that haunted her now. Tom hadn't just been a smuggler. He'd been gathering evidence. Insurance, he'd called it. Proof that could bring down everyone involved. Anna didn't know whether to feel proud or horrified. Marcus cut the engine when they reached the coordinates. The water here was deeper, darker, the surface rippling with invisible currents. Anna scanned the horizon, her pulse quickening. No other boats. No signs of life. Just the endless stretch of ocean and the distant cry of gulls. This is it, Marcus said quietly, checking the GPS. 44 degrees north, 124 degrees west. Anna looked down at the water, imagining what lay beneath. A waterproof container, chained to the ocean floor. Waiting. Marcus pulled out a dive kit mask, fins, a small underwater camera. I'll go down first, he said. See if it's still there. Anna nodded, her throat tight. She watched as Marcus lowered himself over the side, the cold water swallowing him whole. And then she was alone. The minutes stretched. Anna paced the deck, her hands shaking, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. What if the cash was gone? What if Tom had been wrong? What if this was all for nothing? Then Marcus surfaced, gasping, his face pale. "It's there," he said, his voice hoarse. "Exactly where?" he said. Anna's knees nearly buckled with relief. Marcus hauled himself back onto the boat, water streaming from his wetsuit, and together they pulled up the waterproof container with a winch and rope. It was heavier than Anna expected, the metal corroded but intact. Marcus pried it open with a crowbar, and Anna's breath caught. Inside were stacks of cash, hundreds, maybe thousands of bills, vacuum-sealed in plastic. Jewelry glinted beneath the money. Diamonds, gold, watches worth more than Anna had ever seen in her life. And at the bottom, wrapped in another waterproof case, was a USB drive. Anna picked it up with trembling hands. Marcus pulled out his laptop, balancing it on the boat's gunwale, and plugged in the drive. Files loaded slowly, photos, documents, shipping manifests. Anna leaned closer, her heart pounding. The photos showed men in suits shaking hands on docks, cargo containers being loaded onto ships, envelopes of cash changing hands. The documents listed names. Important names. A state senator, a shipping magnate, a customs official. All of them connected to the smuggling ring. All of them complicit. Anna's breath came out in a shaky exhale. Tom was building a case, she whispered. He was going to turn them all in. Marcus nodded, his face grim. That's why they killed him. He knew too much. If you've followed Anna's story this far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us that sometimes the hardest storms aren't the ones outside. They're the ones we carry within. Anna stared at the screen, tears blurring her vision. Tom hadn't just been a criminal. He'd been trying to fix what he'd broken. He'd been trying to protect them, and it had gotten him killed. She closed the laptop, her hands shaking, and looked at Marcus. "We take this to the FBI," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "All of it. The money, the evidence, everything. We tell them Tom was working against the syndicate. We make sure his name gets cleared." Marcus nodded. "And we get you and Leo into witness protection." "Yeah." Anna took a deep breath, the salt air burning her lungs. For the first time in 6 months, she felt like she was doing the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the safe thing, but the right thing. That's when she heard it. The roar of an engine. Low and fast, cutting through the water like a blade. Anna's head snapped up, her pulse spiking. A speedboat was racing toward them, sleek and black, cutting across the waves with terrifying speed. 3 men stood on the bow, their faces hidden by sunglasses and ball caps, and one of them was holding a rifle. Marcus swore under his breath. "They found us." Anna's blood turned to ice. She looked at the waterproof container, at the USB drive in her hand, at the evidence that could destroy an entire criminal empire. And she realized with cold, crushing certainty they weren't going to let her leave this water alive. "Marcus," she said, her voice shaking. "What do we do?" Marcus grabbed the winch rope, his face pale but determined. "We run." The speedboat closed the distance in seconds. Marcus gunned the engine, the fishing boat lurching forward, but it was no match for the sleek predator cutting through the waves behind them. Anna clutched the waterproof case to her chest, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The men were close enough now that she could see their faces cold, expressionless, professional. One of them raised the rifle, aiming it directly at Marcus. Anna's breath caught. "Marcus, I know." He yanked the wheel hard to port, the boat heeling sharply, and Anna stumbled, catching herself on the gunwale. The speedboat followed, matching their every move, closing the gap. They weren't going to outrun them. They weren't going to escape. Anna's mind raced. The evidence, the USB drive, the logbook. If she died here, it would all disappear with her. Tom's sacrifice would mean nothing. Leo would grow up believing his father was a criminal, and the people who'd killed Tom would walk free. No. Anna grabbed the marine radio, her hands shaking, and switched it to the emergency channel. Mayday, 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 she said, her voice cracking but steady. This is Anna Walsh aboard the fishing vessel Sea Runner. We are under attack by armed men. Coordinates 44 degrees north, 124 degrees west. We have evidence of a criminal conspiracy. Requesting immediate assistance. She repeated it twice more, broadcasting on the open channel where anyone with a marine radio could hear. Marcus looked at her, his eyes wide. What are you doing? Making it public, Anna said. If they kill us now, everyone will know. The speedboat slowed. The men looked at each other, their body language shifting from aggression to hesitation. The lead man, the one Anna recognized from the marina, stood at the bow, his face twisted with rage. He yelled across the water, his voice carried by the wind. You just signed your death warrant! But he didn't fire. Anna's chest heaved with relief and terror. They couldn't kill her now. Not on an open channel. Not with witnesses listening. And then, faint but growing louder, came the sound of sirens. A Coast Guard cutter appeared on the horizon, cutting through the waves with purpose. The speedboat veered sharply, its engine roaring, and disappeared into the mist. Anna sank to her knees, the waterproof case slipping from her hands, tears streaming down her face. Marcus cut the engine and dropped beside her, his own hands shaking. You did it, he said, his voice hoarse. You actually did it. Anna nodded, unable to speak. She'd done it. But she'd also destroyed everything Tom had tried to protect. The Coast Guard escorted them back to shore. By the time they docked, FBI agents were already waiting, 3 of them, standing at the edge of the pier in dark suits and sunglasses. Anna climbed off the boat, her legs weak, and handed over the waterproof case. Everything's in there, she said quietly. The money, the evidence, the logbook. The lead agent opened the case, his expression unreadable as he examined the contents. Then he looked at Anna. Mrs. Walsh, we need you to come with us. You're not under arrest, but we need your full statement. Anna nodded. My son, he's safe, the agent said. We've already contacted your sister. He's under protection until we sort this out. Relief flooded through Anna, so intense it nearly buckled her knees. Leo was safe. That was all that mattered. They took her to a small office in a government building overlooking the harbor. Anna sat across from the lead agent, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a kind face, and told her everything. The yacht, the logbook, Tom smuggling, the syndicate, the threats. She spoke until her voice was hoarse, until there were no more words left. When she finished, the agent leaned back in her chair, studying Anna carefully. Mrs. Walsh, she said quietly. There's something you need to know. Anna's stomach tightened. What? Your husband wasn't just collecting evidence. He was working with us. He'd been our informant for the past 8 months. Anna's world tilted. She stared at the agent, her mind struggling to process the words. What? Tom came to us after he realized what he'd gotten involved in. He agreed to help us build a case against the syndicate in exchange for immunity and protection for you and your son. The agent paused. He was going to testify, but they found out before we could move him. Anna couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred, and she pressed her hands flat against the table to keep herself from collapsing. Tom hadn't just been a criminal. He'd been trying to do the right thing. He'd been trying to save them, and it had gotten him killed. Why didn't you tell me? Anna whispered, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you protect him?" The agent's expression softened. "We tried, but Tom insisted on one last run. He said he needed to retrieve the evidence before we could move forward. He thought he could do it without them knowing." She hesitated. "He was wrong." Anna's tears came then, hard and fast, and she couldn't stop them. Tom had died trying to be a hero, and she'd spent 6 months believing he was only a criminal. The agent gave her a moment, then said gently, "You did the right thing, Mrs. Walsh. Because of you, we can finally take down the entire network. Your husband's sacrifice wasn't in vain." Anna nodded, though she could barely see through her tears. She thought of Tom's final words in the logbook, "Forgive me." And for the first time since his death, she did. 6 months later, the Mariner's Rest sat gleaming in the morning light, her hull freshly painted, her deck sanded smooth, her brass fittings polished until they caught the sun like small flames. Anna stood on the dock, her hand resting on the railing, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The FBI's investigation had taken down 12 people, including the state senator and the shipping magnate whose names had been in Tom's files. The trial had been brutal, but Anna had testified, her voice steady, her hands calm. She'd told the truth, all of it, and when it was over, the judge had thanked her for her courage. The reward money had come through last month, enough to pay off their debts, buy a small house near the water, and set aside a college fund for Leo. But more than that, Anna had something she'd thought she'd lost forever. Closure. Leo appeared at the top of the gangplank, carrying a small wooden box. He was taller now, his shoulders broader, his face less shadowed by grief. He still missed his father. Anna could see it in the quiet moments, the way his eyes drifted to the horizon sometimes, searching for something he'd never find. But he was healing. They both were. "Ready?" he asked. Anna nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." They sailed out together, the Mariner's Rest cutting smoothly through the water, her engine purring like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. Anna stood at the helm, her hands steady on the wheel, and felt Tom's presence all around her, not as a ghost, but as a memory she could finally hold without it breaking her. Leo sat beside her, the wooden box in his lap, his fingers tracing the carved initials on the lid. T.W. Tom Walsh. Husband, father, informant, hero, criminal. All of it true. All of it him. When they reached the spot, the place where they used to sail together as a family, before the cancer, before the debts, before the choices that had led Tom to his death, Anna cut the engine. The boat drifted, rocking gently on the waves, and for a moment, there was only the sound of the sea and the cry of gulls overhead. Leo opened the box. Inside were Tom's ashes, pale and fine, like sand. Anna placed her hand over her son's, and together they tipped the box, letting the ashes scatter across the water. The wind caught them, carrying them out toward the horizon, and Anna watched until they disappeared into the blue. Leo was quiet for a long time. Then, his voice soft, he asked, "Do you think Dad knew we'd figure it out?" Anna looked at her son, tears slipping down her cheeks, and smiled. "I think he hoped we would," she said. "I think that's why he left the logbook where I'd find it." Leo nodded, his own eyes wet. "Do you think he was brave?" Anna thought about it, about the choices Tom had made, the lies he'd told, the danger he'd put them in. But she also thought about the evidence he'd gathered, the risks he'd taken to protect them, the final run he'd made knowing it might kill him. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think he was." They sailed back as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Anna stood at the helm, the wind in her hair, the salt air filling her lungs, And for the first time since Tom died, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was finally coming up for air. Leo leaned against the railing, watching the coastline appear in the distance, and said without looking at her, "I'm glad we didn't give up on the boat." Anna smiled. "Me too." When they docked, the marina was quiet, the other boats dark and still. Anna tied off the lines, her movements practiced and sure, and stood for a moment, looking at the Mariner's Rest. She'd bought it to hold on to Tom, but in the end, it had taught her how to let him go. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her wedding ring, the one she'd worn every day for 15 years. She held it up to the light, watching it catch the last rays of the sun, and then, gently, she placed it on the helm, not as a goodbye, but as a thank you for the years they'd had, for the man he'd tried to be, for the truth he'd left behind. Anna stepped off the boat, Leo beside her, and together they walked down the dock toward the parking lot. Behind them, the Mariner's Rest sat silent and strong, no longer rusted, no longer hiding secrets, just a boat, beautiful and whole. And as Anna climbed into the car and pulled out of the marina, she glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The yacht was still there, glowing faintly in the dusk. But Anna didn't look back again. She looked forward, and for the first time in a long time, the road ahead didn't feel so dark. Sometimes the people we love leave us with more than memories, they leave us with truths we're afraid to face. But grief doesn't heal by hiding what hurts. It heals when we're brave enough to open the locked doors, read the unfinished stories, and forgive the flawed, beautiful, broken souls who loved us the best they could. In the end, the greatest act of love isn't protecting someone's memory, it's honoring the truth of who they really were.